Is Fernando Mendoza the next Joe Burrow? What's up? This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff, and on today's show, Mendoza Mania. Is Fernando Mendoza going to be the Raiders' savior? And is Max Crosby going to ask for a trade, or is he going to be convinced that Mendoza is the savior? And the Raiders are casting a wide net in their coaching search. The NFL playoffs are here, the college football playoffs, just one game left, and Fernando Mendoza has stolen the show, which should have you excited as a Raiders fan. Here we go. You should be feeling good about Fernando Mendoza and what's happened in the last two playoff games for Indiana. It's the big number is 8 touchdowns and 5 incompletions in the playoffs against Alabama and Oregon. And no, this is not the same Alabama that we're used to seeing, but they're still a very good college football team. And Oregon's defense is phenomenal. I mean, Oregon's defense was excellent this year, and Fernando Mendoza had no issue, right? And the funny thing is the games have been such big blowouts that Mendoza hasn't thrown for 200 yards in either of these games. He's only thrown the ball 36 times through 2 playoff games. The volume is like crazy low, but there's 8 touchdowns and 5 completions. It's pretty insane. And Indiana, they're 15-0. They're blitzing everyone with the Heisman quarterback. And what's happened, you saw it on the broadcast if you watched Indiana and Oregon. You might have seen somebody like Vinny Bonsignore of the Review Journal tweet about it, that Fernando Mendoza is the next Joe Burrow. Vinny Bonsignore even called Mendoza a generational talent. Now, I want to make one thing really clear. In his last year at LSU, Joe Burrow threw for 2,300 more yards than Fernando Mendoza did this year, and 19 more touchdowns with the same amount of interceptions. Comparing Fernando Mendoza to Joe Burrow, it's wrong, right? It's insane, especially knowing what Joe Burrow has done in the NFL. It's not like he had this great college career and then failed in the NFL. He's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. So making that comparison is pretty insane. However, Mendoza has basically cemented himself as the pick for the Raiders. And I will be straight up with you. As somebody who's going to talk about this for, what do we got, 4 months here going into the draft, it's a little disappointing. I wish there was more intrigue or questions or excitement, but it's pretty straightforward. It's going to be Fernando Mendoza, right? I think the only way it's not, I mean, there's only 2 things that can happen. One is if somebody comes in and blows you away with a trade offer. I mean, just 4 first-round picks, right? Like if somebody comes in and just throws you 4 first-round picks, I think you have to take the 4 first-round picks. If that's up there, just probability says you should be taking the 4 first-round picks. The other way is if the Raiders interview Mendoza in the draft process and he's just bad, right? For whatever reason, they're just like, wow, this guy can't break down plays for us, or he's just doesn't talk to us or answer questions, right? Maybe there's like a Mendoza doesn't want to go to the Raiders and he, tries to throw the interview or pulls on Eli Manning, right? Something like that. But I feel like both of those scenarios are pretty unlikely, right? Like both of those feel like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a possibility it happens, but it's not likely that Fernando Mendoza is going to bomb out in these interviews, right? And it's not likely that the team's going to walk in and offer you 4 first-round picks. So the Raiders are almost certainly going to be drafting Fernando Mendoza because here's the thing. They're in a rare spot. They're picking first overall, and there is a quarterback that might be awesome there, right? And the key is might be because we never know, and I'm going to get to that here in just a minute. But might be awesome. You should be taking that quarterback unless something insane happens, and that would be the massive, 4 first-round picks, or God, this is the worst guy we've ever interviewed before in our lives before we draft him, right? This is what you want. This is what, like I've been saying for a while now. You look at the AFC West. How do you compete with the other 3 teams? And I know they didn't make the playoffs this year, but specifically with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, you probably need your own generational quarterback, right? Like the Broncos hired a good coach and he's made Bo Nix look a lot better than he is and made that entire roster good. You could do it that way. But the most likely way is that you get your own superstar quarterback. This is probably the best bet the Raiders have at doing so, right? Even, if you trade back and you get one extra first round pick, yeah, next year's quarterback class is probably better overall, but are you going to have the number one pick in the draft? Maybe if you just completely tank this season. That's what I would do if I did in fact trade the pick. But it just seems like this is the chance. This is what you want. And they've got it. They should be taking Fernando Mendoza. But I do want to go back to the Joe Burrow comparison because, again, it's absurd. Joe Burrow had like the best season any college quarterback has ever had. And Mendoza might be like the worst Heisman winner of the last 2 decades. Like his numbers are not that good. Like you look last year, Cam Ward and Jackson Dart both had significantly better statistical seasons than Mendoza. Like it's not even close. They were way better statistically. Now, their teams, I think, both went 9-3. Mendoza's is 15-0. Like, yeah, we get it. But I have a different comparison for you, right? And I got 3 quarterbacks that I want to go through. If you're watching, thank you for watching. You're going to get to see a nice graphic. If you're listening, don't worry. I'm going to take you through this. First quarterback here, of these 3, first quarterback here, completed 73.5% of his passes. And by the way, these are all college quarterbacks. These are all quarterbacks in the top 5. Obviously, one of them is going to be Mendoza, so one that's projected to go in the top 5. They're actually all top 2 or projected to go top 2. And these are all their final year of college before they got drafted. First player completed 73.5% of his passes at college. He threw for 3,600 yards. His yards per attempt was 11 even. He had 33 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. The second player completed 73% of his passes, threw for 3,300 yards, 9.4 yards per attempt, 41 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. And the final player completed 72.2% of his passes, 11.7 yards per attempt, 3,800 passing yards, with 40 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So all 3 of these quarterbacks are between 33 and 41 touchdowns. All 3 have between 3 and 6 interceptions. All 3 had a completion percentage of either 72 or 73%. All 3, by the way, threw between 320 and 360 total passes. So the volume is very similar. That's been one of the complaints of the Joe Burrow comparison, is that he threw it a lot more than Mendoza. One of these 3 quarterbacks had a yards per attempt of 9.5. The other 2 were over 11. But these 3 quarterbacks all had nearly identical seasons. So which of these quarterbacks do you like more? Right? Again, all the numbers are pretty similar, but do you like the one that had the slightly higher completion percentage, fewest interceptions, but also fewest touchdowns? Or do you like the one who had the lowest yards per attempt, but the most touchdowns? Or the quarterback who had the highest yards per attempt, just 1 fewer touchdowns than the leader? Which one do you like the most? Those quarterbacks. The first one is Zach Wilson. The second is Fernando Mendoza. And the third is Jaden Daniels. And if you look at their college careers, there are big similarities, right? Obviously, their final year of college are nearly identical statistically. But all 3 of these quarterbacks really only had 1 awesome year at college. All 3 of them were in college for multiple years, had okay seasons, and then a monster final year, right? Zach Wilson had 2 and Fernando Mendoza had 2. They're very similar. Jaden Daniels was at Arizona State, had a decent year, then transferred. All of his teammates hated him, ended up at LSU, played 1 year where he was fine, and then had his monster year. So he had more time there. But all 3 of these guys were in college for multiple years, were okay. They weren't bad. Were okay, and then had this monster season at the end, and all 3 of them basically identical. The point of all of this is not to tell you that Fernando Mendoza is going to be Zach Wilson. And it's not to tell you that he's going to be Jaden Daniels. The point of all of this is to tell you we don't know if Fernando Mendoza is any good. He didn't have some unbelievable season that's an all-time great college football season like Joe Burrow. He, again, didn't even have a season statistically as good as Jackson Dart and Cam Ward did last season, right? Mendoza doesn't have this amazing prospect background or collegiate play, right? He was at Cal for 2 years. He was fine, but wasn't anything special. He only threw 16 touchdowns last year. He doesn't have anything in his background before this season where you would say, okay, well, he was going to be a top prospect. We were just waiting on him to break out. No, until 3 months ago, Fernando Mendoza, did anybody even think he was going to get drafted? I mean, before he got to Indiana, when he was at Cal last year and threw 16 touchdowns, would he have gotten drafted if he had been able to come out that year? I don't know. He's not going in the first round if he does, right? Fernando Mendoza has not been on the radar of first-round pick or first overall pick until 4 or 5 months ago, right? So there's no real background here either. So claiming that he's the next Joe Burrow, claiming that he's this generational talent is foolish because you're basing it off of one good season from Fernando Mendoza, which, by the way, the rest of his team is incredible. They are second in EPA per rush when running the ball on offense, and overall on defense, they're fourth in EPA per play, right? Indiana might be in the national championship game this year with nobody at quarterback, right? Like, remember J.J. McCarthy? Michigan never asked him to throw the ball. They won the national championship because they were awesome. Indiana might have been able to do that with a J.J. McCarthy type performance because of how good everything else is, right? If Mendoza had had this season for Cal last year, would we be talking about him as a first overall pick? Would he have won the Heisman if he had had this season? Because again, statistically, he's nowhere near the best quarterback in college football. He's on the best team in college football and had a very good season. But if he did this exact same year for Cal, he's not winning the Heisman Trophy, and I don't think we're talking about him as the number 1 overall pick. He has looked incredible in the playoffs, but you cannot sit there and say he's generational because he's done exactly what Zach Wilson did. The exact same season that Zach Wilson had at BYU for his final year. Mendoza might be awesome because he's also had the same season that Jaden Daniels had, his final year. And if I were the Raiders, I'm drafting him first overall. If I were in charge, I'm taking him. And I'm taking the swing that he is Joe Burrow. God, I hope so. But to sit here and say that he's Joe Burrow, it seems foolish, right? It's hyperbole right now. And I'll give you one last thing on quarterback comparisons. Fernando Mendoza's yards and touchdowns this year are closer to Jamarcus Russell's final year than Joe Burrow's final year. We don't know if he's any good. Now, key point here. Everybody within the Raiders should probably try to convince Max Crosby that Fernando Mendoza is Joe Burrow. One of the biggest storylines of the Raiders offseason is the future of Max Crosby, right? The Raiders have refused to trade him before. I mean, hell, you can just go back to October. There was a quote from Mark Davis about, I'm not trading this guy. I don't know why everybody thinks I want to trade this guy, right? They do not. Mark Davis does not want to trade him. And Crosby has never said anything outside of wanting to be a Raider for life. But I think that could change this offseason. I think this is an offseason where Crosby actually sits down and evaluates, can the Raiders win a Super Bowl, right? A single playoff game. And if not, if he doesn't think so, he should probably ask for a trade. I think this might be the offseason he actually does that. Now, does Fernando Mendoza convince him? Does Crosby watch college football? I don't know. Do you think he does? But does Fernando Mendoza convince him, right? Is this the thing that's different for the Raiders in his career? Because Crosby has known pretty much nothing but failure as a team since he's been in the NFL. There's been one playoff appearance, and that was the year that John Gruden resigned, got fired, and Rich Bisaccia came in, and it was a mess of a season. They managed to go to the playoffs, right? Max Crosby doesn't know. He's seen regime change after regime change, and it's always gone poorly. They've never had the number 1 overall pick, though. So is that the difference that Crosby sits back and say, okay, this is actually going to be different? And, hey, we could be the Jaden Daniels Commanders, where in year 1, they had this huge turnaround and they were playing in the NFC Championship game. Or at the very least, the Drake May Patriots, right? Took till year 2, but they're in the playoffs as the 2 seed in the AFC. Does Crosby buy into that? Does he believe in that? Obviously, the new head coach will have a bit of an emphasis or a bit of a point to what he believes in as well, right? Does he believe in that? Because the general manager, John Spytek, said it was a rebuild. He basically said, sure, it'd be nice to win 10 games next year, but that's not the goal. So the GM is not expecting a playoff push. That's not happening, according to the GM. So if Crosby believes that, then he's got to believe there's no playoff run coming. There's no Super Bowl run coming. So you ask for a trade. And if John Spytek thinks this is a multi-year rebuild, like he said, he should want to trade Max Crosby. Because Crosby's going to be 29 when next season starts. If it's a multi-year rebuild, then we're talking about, okay, Crosby is 31 when you are potentially going to be good enough to win. Is Max Crosby still a top 5 defensive end in football when he's 31? He might be. It's possible. But odds are no, right? Odds are Crosby's got 1 or 2 years left at this high level and then starts to decline. So if you're not planning to win in the next 2 years, when it's the most likely end of Crosby's peak, you should be trading him to try to get a bunch of assets that can help you in 3 years. Because in theory, you draft well, and I know that hasn't happened around here recently, but if you draft well, or more than recently, if you draft well, then hey, in 3 years, those picks, those players, they start to enter their prime, and then you set up a run, in theory, by then. So if Spytek is truly rebuilding, he should want to trade him. Now, big question, does he have the authority to do that? Right? I mean, honestly, we don't know. If John Spytek thought my best option is to trade Max Crosby, can he do that? Or does Mark Davis say, no, you're not doing that? Or Tom Brady, right? Whoever it is, right? Don't know, right? That's a decision. Like Spytek's the GM. It sounds nice, but it definitely feels like hiring a head coach, drafting a quarterback, and potentially trading Max Crosby are all decisions that are going to be taken out of Spytek's hands. So we'll see. But Mendoza's been great, good enough to where we're like, oh, Crosby, does he see that? Does he want to stick around? And if you're the Raiders, unless something just wild happens, you're taking Fernando Mendoza at 1 overall. He's been that good in the college football playoffs. By the way, I went to the Fiesta Bowl. If you want to hear about that, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/technicallycorrect with Tyler Bischoff is where to go if you want to support the show. If you want to hear about the Fiesta Bowl, we're going to have a lot of fun content there. That's the goal. We're going to try out a bunch of different things here to start and see what people like, see what you guys want more of. But that is up at my Patreon. So patreon.com/technicallycorrect with Tyler Bischoff is where to go. Also, great news. Technically Correct is brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas, the best laser tag in Las Vegas. We got a sponsor. Bischoff's Briefs is brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas. Battle Blast is the perfect spot for your next event, kid's birthday party, corporate event, whatever it is. When your kid finishes a Little League season and you want to have an end-of-season party for his team, Battle Blast, good place to go. Hell, do it for your birthday. Get your friends and family to go and see who's better at laser tag at Battle Blast Las Vegas. I've got to do that. I love having birthday parties for myself. I think I had 3 of them for me last year. Plus, they got arcade, they got prizes. There's more than just laser tag there. Battle Blast Las Vegas, located at 8125 West Sahara Avenue. Your next stop for fun in Las Vegas.
Battle Blast, been serving Las Vegas since June 2012 with the very best in family entertainment. We are proud to provide the best facility, equipment, and service possible. Strap on laser tag vests, step into the 5,600 square foot 2-story arena designed to look like a worn, torn city street. An exciting atmosphere filled with exhilarating music, blacklight effects, and fog. Battle Blast also features a viewing deck for those not playing can watch players vest up and catch a view of the action going on in the arena. In between games, check out our arcade and prize center and enjoy tasty treats from our snack bar. Birthday parties, sports teams, group outings, and corporate events. Battle Blast does it all. We want to make your Battle Blast experience so good you'll want to return again and again. Battle Blast is the ultimate destination for family fun and friendly competition.
The Golden Knights beat the Sharks 7-3. They scored 7 goals again against the Sharks. The dominance for the Golden Knights over San Jose is insane. They swept them this season. They have swept the Sharks in 3 straight seasons. That is 11 straight wins over San Jose. The Golden Knights have gone 1,018 days without losing to the Sharks. And they don't play again. The season series is over, which means that number is going to get bumped up to at least like 1,200. Depends on when the first game is next year and whether they win or lose or not. But that streak is going to get to 1,200. The last Sharks win. These teams are in the same division. They play 3 or 4 times every year. The last Sharks win was March 30th of 2023. I don't understand how they can't beat the Golden Knights just once. Just one time? Is that going to happen? Apparently not. The Golden Knights this year scored 22 goals against San Jose. That is the most in a single regular season by the Golden Knights against an opponent. One caveat there, in 2021, they played the shortened regular season and they just played divisional opponents, so they played everybody like 8 times. That doesn't count because they played them 8 times. They scored 34 on St. Louis that year. Ridiculous. But this is the best goal scoring the Golden Knights have ever had against one opponent in a single season. This year, 15% of the Golden Knights' goals are against the Sharks. They've only played 9% of the games against the Sharks. Right? Their season high is 7 goals. They've done it twice against this team. I do not understand how the Golden Knights do this to the Sharks every single time. And honestly, how the hell have the Sharks beat anybody else? Like, I'll be honest, I haven't watched the Sharks play except against the Golden Knights, but that team sucks. I mean, they are horrendous defensively. Like, they give up everything through the neutral zone, in the defensive zone. They're bad. They're awful. How do they have wins? They have more wins than the Golden Knights do this year. I don't get it. They're like in a playoff spot. I don't understand. I don't know how these other teams are losing to the Golden Knights, or excuse me, to the Sharks. It's insane. You watch them against the Golden Knights, you're like, that's the worst team that's ever played hockey before. Nope. Apparently not. They beat everybody else. Not everybody else. They're still bad. It's the Pacific. Everybody's losing games. But in the Pacific, that is 4 straight wins for the Golden Knights after their 5-game losing streak, which means they've created some of that separation again with the Pacific. After that 5-game losing streak, it was bunched up, not just with like the Edmonton there with the race for the Pacific Division title, but also like 1 through 5 in the Pacific were all within, I think it was 3 points for a day. That's kind of crazy. And the Golden Knights have now won 4 straight and have sort of extended that gap again to where there's some breathing room and some comfort there. In this game, by the way, Tomas Hertl had 5 points. He also got hit in the face with a puck and had 2 more points after that. Jack Eichel scored twice. Shea Theodore's back. He scored since coming back. The Golden Knights are much better with those 2 specifically back in the lineup. Yeah, they shouldn't be losing 5 straight. Again, I don't know if they're going to win 4 straight a lot. They have not won 5 straight yet this year, so they have a chance to set a new season high in a win streak, but they should not be losing 5 straight again. I will say this, as long as like the Raiders don't hire a coach or something, tomorrow's show, we're going to go heavy on the Golden Knights. Jesse Granger should be on the show tomorrow. We're obviously going to get into goaltending there, but we're going to get more into the Golden Knights on tomorrow's show, especially when Jesse comes by. UNLV lost to Colorado State on Friday, 70-62. They lost by 8, but they led by 4 with 5.5 minutes to go and then got outscored the rest of the way handily. The start of this game was fascinating because Josh Pastner benched his starters. He had a new starting lineup for this game. He sat Jacob Benarby, brought in Emmanuel Steffen into the starting 5, and that lineup did not work. They played 3 minutes and 47 seconds together, and they were down 6-0. They had 3 turnovers. Pastner, full sub, 5 new subs into the game, and the new subs made it 10-9. They took the lead at 10-9. So they came in, played well, and gave UNLV a chance, basically. But that lineup did not work, and Pastner had to bench them all just to get some playing time, quality playing time, I should say, out of somebody. But here's the issue. Jacob Benarby is unplayable. There's a reason he got benched for this game, and it's because in the previous game against Wyoming, Jacob Benarby was horrendous. The whole team was horrendous, but Benarby was just awful at everything. And then in this game, Jacob Bernardi was bad again. And specifically towards the end, we are in a tie game in the final 2 minutes. Colorado State runs a back screen. Jacob Bernardi does not give any help, and they give a wide open layup. So they're losing. They come down on offense. Jacob Bernardi gets the ball, goes up for a layup, stripped, loses the ball. Then they come down. The very next possession, Jacob Bernardi in help side defense fouls a guy. It's an and one. He fouls out of the game. Tie game with 2 minutes left. 3 terrible Jacob Bernardi possessions back to back to back, and now they're down 5. He's not playable. But Jacob Bernardi had to be in the game because Kamani Hamilton and Emmanuel Stephan had fouled out. Hamilton at least played 21 minutes. Emmanuel Stephan fouled out in 12 minutes. Those two can't stay on the floor, which means Jacob Bernardi has to play because UNLV, they don't actually have the quantity of bodies. Like Jacob Bernardi kind of does have to play in that scenario, but they also, they don't have anybody better if those two are not on the floor. And Emmanuel Stephan is kind of showing us that he can't play longer than 12 minutes. Kamani Hamilton, it hasn't been a problem the entire year, but Kamani Hamilton has had significant foul trouble issues, and we've seen this before where his minutes end up getting limited. So the roster was poorly constructed. Injuries have made it worse with Miles Che and Ladji Dembele done for the year, right? Like there are reasons for this, but Josh Pastner is going to have to play a guy that I'm telling you in the last 2 games has been the worst player on the floor, and you cannot put in the game. Things are going to go bad, but Pastner has to play him because there's literally nobody else. They're going to get in foul trouble. There is nobody else to go to. UNLV is 7-8 this season. They're now 2-2 in the Mountain West after losing 2 straight. They're only projected by KenPom. They're only projected to be favored in 3 more games. It's both San Jose State games and 1 Air Force game, 1 more Air Force game. There are some games, again, where it's like a 49% chance they win, 48% chance they win, where, they're going to be a point or 2 underdog. But overall, they're not going to win very much more this season. They'll probably win more than this, but there is a chance they finish the year with 10 wins, right? 11-12 is probably going to be in the ballpark if things stay true. Now, we've seen them go to Memphis, go to Stanford, play really well, and sort of walk away thinking, oh, okay, what is this team? They'll probably do that a couple of times. We'll be talking about a win over Boise State or something like that at some point this year, but there's probably not going to be too many of those, and this is going to shape up to be a really, really bad record for UNLV. Now, in the WNBA, the CBA expired over the weekend. The WNBA and the Players Association did not agree to a new CBA. They had extended their deadline to January 9th. I would have to assume that they are not very close because they did not extend the deadline again, right? Like they extended this deadline 2 times already. And I would assume if they thought, oh, we're getting close to our proposals matching here, that they would have done another month or 2 weeks extension to just get this thing done. But because they didn't, I'm assuming they're both very, very far apart. And the concessions that either side is going to have to make to get this to work, neither side is close to making those concessions. Timing-wise, mid-May is when the season started last year. So obviously there's some preseason that goes into that. There's off season. They are putting a moratorium. They're delaying free agency right now. So there's an off season that has to happen, a draft that has to happen, and then preseason, and then the season starts in mid-May. But in theory, there's time, right? Like you don't have to have an agreement done by the end of January for anything to happen at the normal time. So there's time. And it's not the end of the world if you have a shortened season by 5, 10 games, something like that. So there's time for this to happen, but they seem far enough apart that missing games almost seems inevitable at this point. Like it really does. So we'll see what happens. We've talked on this show plenty about the proposals, the different proposals, and what they disagree on. It's player salary, right? How much do the players want versus what the owners claim they would lose in money if they gave them that much. So we'll see what other proposals there are and how close they actually come. But I would guess that they are going to miss some games. UNLV football news, some transfer portal news. UNLV has a new wide receiver, Taz Reddix from Oregon State. He had 30 catches last year for 391 yards. He was their third leading receiver, I should say. UNLV, their top receivers from last year, right? Troy Omeire is in the transfer portal. I don't know how he's in the year of eligibility, by the way. He's been in college for like 6 years. Day Reynolds and JoJo Earl, I believe, are out of eligibility. Who am I forgetting? Jaden Bradley. I'm an idiot. I forgot to double check that. I saw on Reddit that he was in the transfer portal. Did not see that anywhere else, though. And I normally would not believe Reddit. So I forgot to check on that. But Jaden Bradley, maybe he's in the transfer portal. He's already been playing for 5 years as well. So I don't know. But the point here is that UNLV's wide receiver room is going to look drastically different next year, right? They need wide receivers. Taj Reddick comes in. The interesting part on this is like, Oregon State is the UNLV level now, right? Like I know they've got more money over there, but it's not like Oregon State's playing at this high level where you're like, oh, their schedule's way better and dropping down. No, they're at the UNLV's level. So 30 catches for 391 at Oregon State, probably what you expect to happen at UNLV. Now, the offensive environment should be better, so I do think those numbers will be higher. But is he going to have this significant jump like we saw with Calandria or like maybe we're projecting with Jackson Arnold? No. But we'll see where he fits in the wide receiver room. Hell, there's a chance he's the number one guy and he has a 1,000-yard season. So we'll see where he projects in there because this wide receiver room is pretty volatile for the time being. Also, UNLV got a long snapper out of the transfer portal, which is hilarious. One of the best transfer portal additions for any school is a long snapper. Tyson Jacobson from Eastern Washington. I don't know if he's good. I don't know. How do you even know if a long snapper is good unless you watch the long snappers? How many times did he punt it or snap it over a punter's head? I have no idea. They don't even keep stats on that officially for long snappers. So incredible work to get his long snapper out of the portal. Very important position, obviously. They should go get another one. Go get a backup long snapper. Also, the NFC West has 3 of the 4 teams remaining in the NFC. The Bears are the 4th team. They had a 25-point comeback. 25-point fourth quarter in their comeback to beat the Packers. Ben Johnson might be pretty good. Yeah. And I'll by the way, I'll say this on Ben Johnson. Tom Brady wanted him last year. He was the Raiders' first choice and all of that, and he didn't come here. I don't think you would be celebrating anything good if Ben Johnson had been hired by the Raiders last year. Because, one, who would have been the quarterback? Might not have been Geno Smith, but even if it was Geno Smith, I think Ben Johnson's offense with Geno Smith would have looked a lot better. I don't think we would have been talking about Geno Smith as like this worst quarterback in football, right? He might have been good enough to come back next year as a starter. But what I do feel confident saying is that the offense would have been good enough to not get the number 1 pick in the draft. I do think hiring Ben Johnson last year with somebody at quarterback would have led this team to like 9th or 10th pick in the draft. And you're not getting Fernando Mendoza, and you might be going with Geno Smith again and stuck in purgatory. So Ben Johnson looks good. Yes, it sucks, but I don't actually think it's the end of the world, especially because the Raiders fired Pete Carroll after 1 year and will get a chance to hire somebody new this season. Also, Rams beat Carolina and the 49ers beat Philadelphia, which means we get San Francisco at Seattle and the Rams at Chicago. I feel like we're getting Seattle, LA in the NFC title game, but to be completely honest, who's best of those teams? Who's best of anybody that's left in the playoffs, right? This feels like the most wide open postseason that we've actually had. On the AFC side, we still have Houston and Pittsburgh tonight, so we'll see who comes out of there. But we got a great Buffalo-Jacksonville game. The Bills are going to have to go to Denver. But I want to say this. Liam Cohen's good, right? Like, that's a good head coach. And Trevor Lawrence is good enough as a quarterback that they're going to be good for a while. I guess there's the McDaniel Tua possibility, but I feel like they're going to be pretty good. That they're going to be legitimate contenders to win that division for quite a while. The other part of this, he's going to get killed for it. Josh Allen, if they don't win the Super Bowl, or I should say maybe at least make the Super Bowl, if they make it and lose the Rams, but if they don't get out of this AFC, it means you're either losing to Bo Nix in Denver or somebody like Drake May in New England, right? Like, you're going to lose to a quarterback that's worse than you. He's going to get killed for that. The problem is Buffalo's defense is so bad, and their run defense is so bad that it's like, yeah, Josh Allen's going to be the best quarterback. But is he going to be able to overcome what a bad defense is there? Like, that feels like the game against Denver very much feels like a Bo Nix makes like two good plays the entire game, and it's enough to win because they run the ball really well, and the Denver defense does enough to keep the Bills from just putting up 35 points, right? That Denver wins that game 21-17 because Bo Nix made like one good throw in the fourth quarter. It's what they've done the whole year. That's what feels like happens there. So NFL playoffs are here. It's a lot of fun. So we'll see who actually wins. But again, I don't know who's winning that side either. I'd like to tell you that the Bills are going to win it. That would be fun, right? To see Josh Allen play in the Super Bowl, but I don't feel confident about that. I don't think, are they going to Denver and winning? I think the spread was a pick 'em that I saw. It's the most wide open I feel like the NFL playoffs have ever been. But this has been Bischoff's Briefs, which is brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas, the best laser tag in Las Vegas. Host your next birthday party at Battle Blast. You can book the party package. You'll get a private party room, dedicated private host, pizza, soda, arcade tokens, and obviously laser tag. You can also add on a game for adults. Or just, again, book your own birthday party there. It's Battle Blast Las Vegas, located at 8125 West Sahara Avenue. Battle Blast Las Vegas, your next stop for fun in Las Vegas. If you want to support the show, you can find me on Patreon. It's patreon.com/technicallycorrect with Tyler Bischoff. Head there. You can support the show. I'll have some extra content there, some bonus content. Just got it started. There's not a lot up there now, but there will be some bonus content there. So check me out on Patreon if you want to help out the show. Back into the Raiders, because we got some more news over the weekend on head coaching interviews. And we already know or knew about Kevin Stefanski, who got fired by Cleveland. They interviewed the Broncos quarterbacks coach Davis Webb, the Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, Chiefs OC Matt Nagy, and Seahawks OC Clint Kubiak, right? But the upcoming ones, Mike LaFleur, that is the Rams offensive coordinator. They're also going to interview the passing game coordinator of the Rams, Nate Scheelhaas, plus Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley and Panthers defensive coordinator Algero Avero. So those are all your candidates, at least that have been reported, most of that by Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. That is 6 offensive-minded candidates and 3 defensive-minded candidates. I'm going to say it over and over until they hire a head coach. Hire an offensive mind. You should be trying to find your offensive mind that matches with Fernando Mendoza, that can take Fernando Mendoza for the next 3+ years and turn him into something special. And obviously, if it works, longer than 3 years. But that is what you should be trying to do. Because part of the issue is if you hire a defensive-minded head coach, might be a good coach, might be the best coach available, whatever. The problem is you have to hire an offensive coordinator. And so you have to then get the head coach right and the offensive coordinator right to give Mendoza a chance at being good. And if you get the offensive coordinator position right, you get it 2 right, you lose that guy pretty soon, and now you've got to go hire somebody else again. I would not hire a defensive-minded head coach if I were the Raiders. I wouldn't hire a defensive-minded head coach if I was pretty much any team in the league, right? I think a good example is the Tampa Bay Bucks. They lost Dave Canales and Liam Cohen the last 2 years of their offensive coordinators to keep Todd Bowles as their head coach. Right now, which of those 3 coaches would you like to have? If you ranked them, who's third? Because I'm pretty sure it's Todd Bowles. I don't think you want a defensive-minded head coach in the NFL right now. I think you want an offensive-minded head coach, especially when you have the first overall pick. Now, the Packers apparently might fire Matt LaFleur. They might do it by the time you listen to this. If they fire LaFleur, that's a name that if I'm the Raiders, like I think I'm interested in hiring right away, right? Like that's the offensive play caller that makes quarterbacks look better. And I know the Packers were disappointing this year, right? They lost a bunch of close games. They had the lead in. If you think that's because of LaFleur and coaching, I guess, but I think he's a great offensive coach, and just weird shit happens in football, right? In close games, weird things happen. We just saw it in back-to-back years with the Kansas City Chiefs. They couldn't lose 1-score games. This year, they couldn't win them. Did Patrick Mahomes get worse at football? Is Andy Reid a worse coach now? No. It's football. Weird things happen when it's a 3-point game with 90 seconds to go. Green Bay, since LaFleur has been there, has been top half in points every single season. This year was the worst, and they were 16th. So I got to say top half, right? They've been a good offense every single year with LaFleur. They've had years where the quarterback's been hurt this year and still had a good offense. And yes, Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, those have been his quarterbacks. Good to amazing quarterback play since LaFleur has been there. But if you're the Raiders, you're hiring a coach assuming Fernando Mendoza is good. If Fernando Mendoza sucks, it's not going to matter who you hire as the coach. He's going to get fired in 2 or 3 years. You're going to be looking for a new quarterback, right? Everything should be, okay, we think Mendoza is good. You don't have to think he's great, just good. And if you think Mendoza's good, you want the the play caller that makes good great. And if he's great, you want the play caller that makes great top 5 in the league. That's what you should want. I think LaFleur can be that if he were to get fired by the Packers. So we'll see if the Packers actually do it. But if he does, I think he should shoot to the top of the Raiders list. Somebody that I don't think should be at the top of the Raiders list is John Harbaugh. Not because I don't think John Harbaugh is a good coach. But according to Jay Glazer, John Harbaugh was taking the weekend to narrow down his choices to 3 or 4 teams, and then he was going to go interview for those jobs. He was not going to just interview for all of the open jobs in the NFL. So, curious, will the Raiders be one of those 3 or 4 spots? Assuming they're one of the teams that reached out to him. I would have to guess all of the teams that have an opening, except the Ravens, would have reached out to him. Are the Raiders an attractive spot for Harbaugh? You have the number 1 pick, and you, in theory, have Fernando Mendoza. Max Crosby is here for now, but the general manager did just say they are rebuilding. And overall, this roster is bad. Like, you keep Crosby and you draft Mendoza. Good. There's a lot of holes that have to be fixed, right? Is that attractive to Harbaugh? Right? I don't know. I don't know if it is. I think the big problem here, outside of hiring a defensive-minded head coach and everything I just said about you want the offensive guy, I think the big problem I would have is that it's the same exact logic as hiring Pete Carroll. Why are you hiring John Harbaugh? It's because he had a lot of success and this sustained culture of winning, which is exactly why they hired Pete Carroll. That's what they thought Pete Carroll was bringing to the Raiders, and it did not work. And if you hire Harbaugh, you're basically hiring the same exact guy 2 years in a row when you should be rebuilding. And that would bring me to the other part. Would Harbaugh rebuild? Or would Harbaugh walk in and say what Pete Carroll said, we're winning 10 games. All I know is to win 10 games. We're not rebuilding. That's what we're doing. And I feel like Harbaugh might be a big enough name that Mark Davis gets enamored with it. And he might have been, okay, let's rebuild. But then he gets John Harbaugh and he says, we don't need to rebuild. We have John Harbaugh and the number 1 pick. We can do this right away. So I would not hire him. There are a lot of things that are scary there, not mainly Mark Davis, but I would not hire him. That would not be the coach that I would be after if I were the Raiders, even though he might be the best coach available. It's not the type of coach that I would want with Fernando Mendoza and the state of the roster, the state of the franchise, and the realistic timeline to contending. I am not interested in John Harbaugh as my head coach, just like they should not have been interested in Pete Carroll last year. But that is it for Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. I'm Tyler Bischoff. Shout out to Battle Blast Las Vegas for sponsoring the show. Very excited to have Battle Blast Las Vegas sponsoring the show. So check out Battle Blast Las Vegas, and we will see you tomorrow.